Well, yeah, I'll kick off with an intro. Well, I think you know who I am, but name's Chris. Run Mainframe's Manchester studio, and obviously look after all things Cavalry, along with Ian and the other guys on the team. And yeah, currently talking to you from a place called Alderley Edge, which is just outside Manchester.
Yeah, I'm Ian. I'm a developer. I'm Cavalry's dad. That's probably a good way to describe me. Yeah, just design and development on Cavalry, and that's about it. I used to be. Oh, that's something that is interesting. Is I used to be an animator, so that's how we fell into all of this stuff when I was working for Chris and smashing my head against a keyboard.
Still doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Adam, as you might know. I'm based in Portland, Maine, and I'm an animator, freelancer. And having fun with Cavalry.
I'm Dean. I live in Manchester. My main line of work is like UI design, and then I do motion design for freelance as well.
Nice.
Okay. Cool. Yes, Adam, if I call you Alan again, feel free to leave this call.
Yeah, right.
I can't remember why. I have an uncle, Alan, and there was somebody else called Alan we were dealing with at that time, so that's why I kept calling you.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, Adam Jens has obviously sent through a bit of some questions that we can sort of form this conversation around, but I think, we can just keep it very loose and see where it takes us. Yeah, I'll kick off by saying thank you so much for all the effort, feedback, bug reports, all the work put together that's gone out there. It's just been absolutely amazing to, it just fills our hearts with joy whenever these things hit the internet and we see something new somebody's done in Cavalry. So
totally,
yeah,
that's great.
Big thank you for that. But yeah, I guess this session's really about trying to understand how you guys are getting on. Generally, what are you liking? What are you hating? What do you think could be better? What do you really want it to be in the future? But yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of first question is, having used Cavalry for, well, both of you several months, I think, on and off. What are your kind of overall impressions? How would you, can you sum up your experience to date and kind of how you feel about it for the future as well, I guess. Adam, should we go to you first?
Sure. So I wrote some stuff down, so hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm reading from paper. But I mean, first up, like, it's great. Like, I love it. It's right up my alley. It's super fast and like quick to experiment and play around with ideas. Like, you can think of something, and it's so much easier than like any process I've had before with like After Effects or Cinema 4D or whatever. Taking an idea and sort of implementing that idea is pretty fast in Cavalry, and that's what I really like about it. And yeah, so, and then like, it's really great to have all these like 3D tools in a 2D program, like fall-offs and like the cloners or the duplicators. Super useful. And like, I personally do mostly 2D, and I kind of hate using 3D programs for 2D stuff. It's a little bit too removed from how I sort of interpret these things. So I just love the concept of your application in general, So that being said, it's like, I think the UI and everything is super friendly, and like, I love that, you can open it up and it's like After Effects, right? So like, you have all of these things, like these quick keyboard shortcuts and other stuff that you've incorporated into it. So like someone opening Cavalry for the first time sort of feels at home already, you know, to some degree. And I think I'd like to see more of that if possible. But so, you know, it's super friendly. It's not intimidating. You open it up and you're not like, what the heck's going on here? You know, I think, you know, it's sort of hard to go back in time and like think about how I was learning it. But I think for the most part, nothing was like, you know, super confusing.
Yeah, that's really interesting and good to hear, because I think while we were developing Cavalry, obviously we're kind of in it every day, and you know, it's kind of incremental decisions happen.
Right.
And then it's sort of, okay, let's see how everyone gets on with this now. And there definitely is a slight mind shift. I think, you know, we've intentionally not tried to move too far away from After Effects in that
right.
a lot of people are familiar with that, and there's lots that's not wrong with After Effects. You know, we've been using
right,
it
exactly.
ourselves. But yeah, there is a sort of a kind of mind shift that you've got to make in Cavalry. And yeah, it's just interesting that you know, that we definitely had sort of, we thought, okay, we've dealt with this very carefully. We think everyone's going to understand this, but in the back of your head, you also think, but are they? You know, conceptually,
right.
there's a different way of thinking about building some things together. So it's interesting that you didn't see that as too big a barrier on that. You know, it's hard to go all the way back to the first time you opened it, right? But
right. Yeah, I mean, so that's what I was sort of trying to do with this, is like trying to understand what it was like when I was first there. And honestly, that is hard. But I do remember, like, you know, watching some of your tutorials, like about the staggered circle, and like before I had watched that, I opened Cavalry and didn't look at any of the tutorials and was kind of like, what's going on here? And then like trying to figure out how to stagger like an animation or something. That sort of, I think that tutorial made it all kind of click, you know, like how behaviors work. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's all that confusing, you know.
okay,
which is a good thing.
It's good.
And then
when we're developing this stuff, you're often so close to it for so long that it's really hard to put yourself in those shoes of someone who's about to learn it for the first time or whatever. You can't get too close. You can't see it. I was actually having a conversation with one of the developers today, Ed, who's worked on one of the features in Cavalry, and he had a good idea for it when he started. Worked on it for a while, put it in, and then he's like, I can't. Is it good? I can't tell anymore. You know, just because he's been buried in it for ages. It's like, yeah, it is still, but yeah, you look at it from the outside.
So Dean, before we go too far and put words in your mouth, did you have a similar experience? Were there any...
No, it was a kind of a different one, as me and Ian discussed a while back. There's a lot of things which I kind of do as second nature in it, which adapted from other programs from a UI perspective, which don't work. So for the large part, it's really seamless. You know, the timeline view is incredible. The graph is brilliant. The layers, that's fantastic. That's all good stuff in After Effects. Behaviors, kind of like Fusion in a way. Love all that. But I find like the UI trips me up a lot of times. Just subtle things, which I have made a list of as well, if that helps. It's a beautiful UI. It's just sometimes you go to do something, you're like, that's how it should work, and then it doesn't. So that's kind of more of the side of things which trips me up more than anything.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. We've put a lot of work into the UI around, trying to sort of combine this node-based background with the layer side of things, which has been very, very challenging. But yeah, we'd love to hear all that. I think, you know, we're still at a stage where, you know, the UI is certainly coming along, and we feel it's, you know, improving all the time. But
yeah,
it's definitely something that we're learning as we go. You know, to an extent with that, because there's just some new workflow that suddenly pops up with a new node, a new element that arrives. So, oh God, I really want to be able to reorder an array or something, you know.
There's also there are workflow things that are so kind of fundamental to some workflows that we're only just getting, like the moving things in the viewport using arrow keys or spinning values using the arrow keys. I mean, that went into Cavalry last week. You know, Cavalry's 3 years old. That went in last week. You know, that kind of thing. So we're still getting to what you would call like basic functionality, just because there is so much of that. It's really
right.
And I think just because because my background's in UI, I pick up on that stuff really clearly. And I think some other people like Adam might not struggle with that as much as me. So
yeah, I mean, the UI thing is definitely an interesting area, because I think, you know, you can do some very complex things in Cavalry.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, a lot of people, it's that sort of the first time you presented with it, you don't necessarily want to do those really complex things. So it's that balance is hard. With, you know, we're definitely finding that a challenge.
Yeah, and I should say it's sorry, it's less to do with the UI of like doing certain things, and more to do with stuff like you know, I mentioned this to you the other month, Ian. You know, like command plus add nulls, it doesn't zoom in. Like that still today, after using it countless times, throws me off. And
it's also still on my to-do list to change.
But like I handed that to a friend the other day, and he was doing the same constantly, and he was just like, "For fuck's sake!" Mind my language, but so you know, it's little things like on that UI perspective, rather than the functionality perspective, which is brilliant. Like being able to, you know, pistol whip, whatever it's called. Pistol, that's not the term.
Yeah,
pick whip, thank you. I've watched too many films lately. You know, behaviors and everything. That's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it's more of the little functionality pieces, which I will get to in a bit.
I will say one thing that I did write down that was about me just like the first time using it, is that pick whipping works in reverse from After Effects, and so that was super confusing, and it took a while to get used to. And now when I'm in After Effects, I'm constantly doing the backwards, you know. And so, I don't know if that's something you should change. I'm not saying you should change it. I'm just saying it throws you off.
For us, that's really interesting, because for us, you drag the connection in the direction that the data is going. So I'm going from here to here with this piece of information, and so that's the direction that you drag it in. I totally understand how that, because you're building expressions in After Effects, so I get how that's the other way around. But yeah, this is in Cavalry, because you're making behind the scenes, you know, we're making connections between nodes, which obviously we've hidden on the front ends, but I guess the micro interaction that you would do on a node to make that connection has come through to the front end of Cavalry. That's really interesting.
That's really funny you mention that, because that kind of happened to me, and I didn't really know what was going on as to why I couldn't pick whip it after.
I was doing it in all directions.
Trojan horse. We're just going to break that.
Yeah, I think that is a difficult one for us, because I think when we move to the node editor that we would love, we're sort of moving towards at some point in a slightly unknown future, but that all that will make a bit more sense, I think, in the direction side of things from if we went the other way. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe there's a hotkey there, Ian.
There's another aspect to the UI and to the picking it up and learning Cavalry from a fresh start with the complexity that it provides. You know, the sheer number of buttons, or what you can do from the get-go without too much, without going too deep. And one of the things that we've struggled with is how complex do you make the basic core UI, so that when someone arrives, is it clear to them what they can do something, and I push here to do this or whatever. Find comp settings, add an element, that kind of thing. And then, but the complexity that you want to show to a beginner is not the complexity that you want to show to someone who's been using the app for a couple of months. So it's the complexity that you want to show is a moving target depending on someone's experience, and being able to kind of like layer workflow. So there's a way to do this where you just go to this menu and then you do this, and then you drag this from here, and then later on there's a much faster way. If you kind of know what you do, you can just hold Alt while you're doing this, and then that does all this for you, and then you can just you're on to the next bit of the workflow or whatever. Having this kind of moving target of complexity is something that's been quite quite interesting to watch grow as we've
Right.
Yeah, I do want to say it's way faster to use even with them quirks than After Effects for me, and it's like light years ahead of Fusion, which I still can't wrap my head around after 2 years of trying to use it. So like you guys have done a really good job on being able to start it up and get somewhere. From when I first opened it up, I didn't see, because there isn't a ton of tutorials out there from you guys. The 1 minute tutorials are fantastic. So I was able to pick up some bits from there, but without a ton of tutorials, I was able to get pretty far. So I think that speaks volumes of just how well the UI, is as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I mean, I think I probably just used Cavalry for 1 day before I started like creating stuff with it, and I think that is pretty incredible. It's not like I'm starting from nowhere. I do this for a living, but it's opening the program and creating something cool. It's really it's simple. Like it was not a long learning process, and again, like Dean said, there's no real tutorials. Like I was just looking at the documentation, and like that seemed to work out fine for me. And so I think there's definitely something to be said that like it is easy enough to learn or to learn parts and to make something cool, pretty quickly.
Okay, well, we can come back to this if just keep peppering us with these things if they come back around. But just sort of segueing on to the next question, which is sort of around how Cavalry's fitted into a pipeline. At Mainframe we've started using it in 3D projects, so we've had it building textures for us. We've used the data things to liaise with client and build effectively textures that animated image sequences that then go into 3D, and we render that out. And we've used it in 2D as well. But it's kind of interesting that we've from a production company side of things, we've kind of used Cavalry in quite not really what it was intended for originally in some of our first projects. And then the UI side of it, I've been building some new Cavalry UI inside of Cavalry, trying to do that as well to see if that works. Which we're kind of close. We're getting there too, and it's interesting. We obviously can't go out to code, so there's a bit of a thing there. But anyway, sorry, I'm going on. But I've found it really interesting. Our artists at Mainframe, we're not coercing them to use Cavalry. They're gravitating towards it now, which is fantastic. I don't know, Dean, have you used Cavalry in any sort of commercial projects or?
Yeah, I've mainly been using it for stuff which isn't motion graphics entirely though, like creating GIFs and like blog post graphics and things along them lines. It's been really good to create them, which is obviously isn't what it's used for. And then I've used it to create some bits of UI mockups as well. But that's really it.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I personally have been probably against my better judgment to use beta software in client work. I have, brought it in just because of how fast it is to ideate. And honestly, a lot of what I've used it for has been storyboards. And so I was just on a project that went through like, 7 rounds of style frames and 3 different full storyboards. And having Cavalry was super helpful. Like, I don't know if I can share my screen, if that makes sense. It's just kind of great, that you can like just, try stuff that I would never like, actually do in After Effects. Like I would never have time to like do something like this for a storyboard, because it would just be, it would just take too long, And then just like so many different things that you can, like quickly, build graphs or, all sorts of different lines. And these are all elements, I'm rendering these out, and then these are going to be used in After Effects, or Photoshop or whatever, to build storyboards.
Cool. And would any of this, Adam, make it, into actual production? Do you think? Could you see what you're building
yep.
turn into actual, work?
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, so this was like one big project that was I mainly used it for storyboarding, and then I have done a few different projects that are 100% Cavalry, and I'm using mainly just stuff that is like duplicators, like stuff you can't really do in After Effects, or that would be super complicated. And then there was one kind of workaround. So I did have a project that had to be 100% animated in After Effects because I was sharing it with other animators. But I was like, well, I can still use Cavalry to like do some basic design, and like you can, do something like this and then export as an SVG and then head over to After Effects. And like you can bring everything in through Illustrator and Overlord. And so you can still design in Cavalry and then like quickly animate in After Effects.
That's interesting.
And so this has actually been, a really nice benefit of the SVG export is, I wasn't initially sure what I would do with that, but it actually turns out that you can use, Cavalry as a design tool, even if you still have to animate in After Effects for whatever reason. So yeah, I've definitely been using it, and it's been super helpful.
Cool.
Yeah.
Have you given Adrian, what's it called, Danin, his little sort of After Effects bridge from Cavalry to After Effects? Have you had a try with it?
Yeah, I played around with it a little bit, but honestly, I have not used it as much as I probably should have.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that I'm doing in Cavalry seems to be a little slow when I bring it into that thing.
Yeah, it was the same for me.
But I think that's going to get better, and I love the idea behind it. Like I think once that is optimized, it's going to be really useful to have.
It's interesting. There was much talk of Cavalry being an After Effects killer, and while maybe that might happen one day, that's not going to happen next week. So that whole sort of move, that interop into After Effects is very interesting, and we haven't really talked about it recently, have we, Ian? But we have had plans for a plugin, an After Effects plugin that you could literally just bridge the viewport effectively, and you could run both at the same time in the same place. So
that's a cool idea.
Yeah, it looks like you benefit from that, Adam.
Yeah, well, the way I keep thinking about it is like I know you guys probably have, lofty goals to like take over the motion graphics market, but in the meantime, these are all tools. Cinema 4D is a tool, After Effects is a tool, Cavalry is a tool, and when they're working together, like heck yeah. And I think that's the way I view it. It's like Cavalry is a great addition to After Effects and to Cinema 4D or whatever, and I think it works really well in concert with them,
Dean, you mentioned sort of UI side of things. Could you expand on that at all? Is there how far has that gone? What does UI mean in that context?
You mean the design stuff I've done?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. You mentioned.
Sorry.
using
Yeah.
it for,
Cool.
for some of the UI work. Yeah.
Mainly just creating like little mock-ups of, like, I have a membership site, one of my courses, and creating like a mock-up of that essentially, and then having things animate in. That's
Okay.
kind of what I've done. So like kind of like a fake version of the membership area,
Right.
but without images. It's kind of just been all shaped based.
Yeah.
But I plan on, like, in the future, when I spoke to Ian about this, when you guys doing Lottie, definitely, if you guys do Lottie, expanding to do a lot more stuff with that, because my background is in web design as well, like I said. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a huge piece of our puzzle. Yeah, I've got some very interesting things going on there, but yeah, quite a big, all these things, stories. It's quite a big story.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when the stuff that I've done in the UI stuff was kind of things like building row widgets. So in the scene window, used to be project window. You have your rows and everything.
Yep.
And it was quite interesting building that up with. You've got an icon, you have a label, you have this, and you can build it all with arrays, and then use fall-offs to do highlights and all those kinds of things. And
oh, that's cool.
It was good, actually. It was quite nice to be able to do it, and to sort of, as someone who, I kind of tend to work in Figma these days for our UI stuff.
Yep.
And that's obviously building some nice animation tools as well, but is limited to the sort of animation you might want to do in a UI rather than any old sort of animation.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting you putting Cavalry into that context as well, because it really helps me to be able to see it. Just see what does a highlight look like when you roll over it, and actually prototype those kind of things. Yeah, and it was very meta doing it in Cavalry, but for
or Cavalry, yeah. I can imagine.
But okay, that's great to hear. It's just amazing to us to know that you guys are using it for real, in anger. Whether it be client projects or for your own stuff, it's amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I don't know his first name, but he's under Fiverr. I think you guys know him. Yeah. I spoke to him the other week, and he said he's doing a bringing you guys into Resolve/Fusion.
Yeah.
I think that will mean I'll be using it just a lot more as well, just because time-wise, exporting things, bring them in. Sometimes it's easier for me just to create a little thing in Fusion, even though I suck at it in Fusion, than exporting. So I'm looking forward to that.
The next question I'd put to us all is, other beta testers that has really impressed you. I mean, Adam, you've been pretty prolific in your output, or had a good strong month for sure, wasn't it? Was it a month?
Yeah. It was about a month. Yeah. And hopefully I'll get back to that soon. It's just been crushed with client work. I mean, I wrote down some names, like obviously Don Brooks over there. He's been killing it with his FUI stuff. Michael Connolly, love his print work, super cool. I actually bought one of his prints.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. Another guy using Cavalry for what it shouldn't be used for.
Well, I think that's one of the cool things about the SVG export is that you can continue to focus on, these animation tools, but someone's going to do something different with it,
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And then, so I'm going to probably butcher some of these names. Kai Engel or something. His 36 days of type experiments, those were really cool, like focusing on the patterns and the lines. I like that. There's a guy, Song D or something, who's been doing like a lot of work with gradients and duplicating gradients, and like almost looks 3D. Those have been cool. John Christensen, who I think only just dabbled in it for like when I was just starting up, but he did some really cool stuff with like there was like a picture of Ryan Johnson with all the knives out.
That's
and
it.
things. And I was like, that was cool. And you know, and I keep being on the Discord and like just the knowledge of some folks. Like I haven't seen any of their work. Like Dean, I haven't seen any of his stuff. But you know, so many people just know so much already, and so it's great. You know, it's cool to see.
One of the things that we're loving about Discord is that people are asking questions and we're not having a chance to answer them because someone else will have answered them
Right?
before we get there.
Great. So true.
Sorry, Dean. Was there anyone in particular that you've seen or that covered?
Mainly Adam, to be honest. Yeah, his stuff is what got me. I did a little stalk on, you know, when not on you, Adam, but you know, like when you've got people tagging Cavalry, and it was when I found his stuff, and that made me like really stoked for it, because most of the stuff I had just seen was kind of like geometric shaped based things. It wasn't the kind of motion graphics I'm into. So it was really good to see Adam show that was possible. And Dom, obviously, but it goes without saying. So they're the two I would say that have really seemed different content-wise.
Yeah. We've got Dom doing cloth sims at the moment, and he just wants to be doing Cavalry.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, you know, talking about maybe style in general. There definitely seems to be like a point when everyone's like trying Cavalry and all sort of producing the same sort of stuff because of how easy it is to like do you know, a duplicator. You know, so I don't know if that's going to change, but you know, I think it's interesting to see, you know, looking on the hashtag, there's all the like so many similar posts, which is interesting.
I like the you often see the oscillator one that was
right
the one in tutorials. And it's also one of the files that you can just download, you know, from the docs.
Right.
Yeah, I had noticed that. Just change the color.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. But that's what they're for, you know. They're designed for people to go in and just feel cool about it. So
Yep.
Yeah, they were super handy. Reverse engineering them was really, really good.
Right.
So it's good that you guys provided them, even if they aren't like, you know, the kind of style I do at all. It taught me a lot about behaviors and stuff, which I'm not really used to. You know, I told Ian, like my background really isn't in that side of things. So it kind of introduced me to them.
Yeah. Those files. Sorry.
Go ahead, Adam. Yeah.
Those files have been super helpful. I'm actually still using them every once in a while when I try something new. Yeah, just saying, those have been super helpful for sure.
That's good. Yeah, it's sort of a bit of a fine balance for those, trying to do something that's kind of complex enough that it's interesting, but not so complex that you just, you know, you've got no idea how to unpick it. So
right.
Yeah, that oscillating line ones is literally the first thing I think we ever posted, you know, that we were able to build and post. So that's going to be there forever. That's our teapot.
Right.
Cool. The next question, I'll sort of rephrase it a bit. I think it was sort of what are the features that you'd like to see in the, you know, in the future. But I guess another way to ask that is, what problems would you see? You know, what problems do you still have that you hope that Cavalry will solve in the future? You know, in terms of your pipeline and you know, all the holes in your tools at the moment that you've got your fingers crossed that we're gonna sort out.
Well, I got a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we can kind of jump back and forth between me and Dean, but I have like a few main things that I'd love to see that are like super integral to like my workflow as a motion designer in general. and how I would like to see, or use Cavalry, in the future. And I think the number one thing right now that I think that I want more than anything is the ability to export motion data from Cavalry to After Effects or Cinema 4D or whatever. I mean, probably not Cinema 4D, but kind of like Mocha or something, where you can just export the transform data and it'll create a null in After Effects. I think that is like top of the list of what would be super useful, because it's like I don't think you guys are going down the compositing road, right? And to be able to export all this stuff and then composite it in After Effects, to have the transform data for nulls or whatever would be super useful.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
Cool. We've been there with Maya and After Effects.
What's that?
We've built something for Maya and After Effects on that front, so we kind of know what's involved there.
Okay, cool, nice. And then sort of a similar tangent is that I would love to be able to like export passes. So like if you could export all your layers or something with one click, so you got different elements that you can composite in After Effects. That would be super useful.
That one's probably closer than the first thing you mentioned.
Yeah.
What you're talking about there has actually already had a little bit of groundwork done. So I've been thinking about that. Yes, I think
Nice.
I think Dom's really keen as well. It's come up
right.
Is that tags in? Is that sort of linked in with tags?
No, it's linked in with the changes made to render items recently, where the same render item can actually be linked to multiple things. So it can be linked to a comp or it can be linked to a shape. So at the moment, a render item, when you add a render item, it can only render the comp that it's attached to currently. However, on the back end, I've made it so that you can actually attach as many as you like. So you could have a render item, which is say a ProRes export that whatever with a certain file name and that kind of thing, but it could go through several comps and render several comps with that render item. So that's what that's related to.
Should we tag team? Dean, do you want to?
Yeah. I went blank now and I had loads.
Go to your spreadsheet. No, what was it? You've got a website, haven't you?
I did. I was looking at that earlier, actually. I think a big thing for me, it could be covered potentially with what Adam just said, but I'm not sure, is a way to I know you guys are going to be having it at some point in a couple of years or whatever, but cameras would be, or camera, big one for me, like a huge one, and a good one, obviously. I think Fusion sucks and everyone loves it, but it's not that good in my opinion. Or a way to get some of that stuff into After Effects and use their camera, one or the other. And I don't think there is a way to do that right now. Even when I exported the individual layers, I still couldn't really get anywhere like far with it. That's probably my number one thing, to be honest. Because I do a lot of stuff with cameras in After Effects, it's been a bit of a bottleneck for me.
Yeah, we're very keen. We have R&D here, and we'll get cameras at some point. Definitely. I find cameras a fascinating topic because I think so many apps get them so very wrong in their controls and think how you can manipulate a camera from with the mouse or whatever. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll do a good job of that one when we get there.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've used very few camera systems, so I've heard I think is it Maya's? Theirs is really good, but I'm not sure. But some people say like the 3D world does cameras a lot better than say After Effects. So I'd be curious to see how you guys do it.
Yeah, I think it's that sort of, it's the 3D rather than 2.5D thing, which does it give you some sense of reality going on.
Got you.
Yeah.
It's also the fact that I think that an After Effects camera by default is unintuitive because they have like 1,000 mil focal length or something in order to give it an orthographic look, so that when you turn it on, it doesn't, everything in your scene doesn't move, which is what would happen if they didn't have that. So
yeah,
so this is one of the tricky things, because we've had a similar problem when we've been experimenting as well. So it's going to be interesting, how we try and find a slightly less "what that's happening" kind of way around that. I'm trying to turn a light on. It's got very dark.
I was just like, I think the big thing for me, with like Fusion, why I really can't stand that camera, is the depth of field as well. I don't know if you guys have ever played with Fusion's camera, but like you go from like 1 to 10 and it just literally goes from like 0 to you can't see anything because it's so blurred out. And your computer crashes and it's a mess. So that's why I guess why I guess it's difficult to get right.
Yeah.
And then the other big one for me would be obviously, like I said earlier, Lottie support.
Yes, going out to the web is high on our agenda. In fact, it was one of the original aims of the app way back when, was to go out to the web. So yes, we're still deciding on quite how to go about this, but yeah, we'll definitely, we want to head in that direction.
What I found fascinating was, like, even as a web designer, I didn't know that SVG stuff was being killed off until you guys said.
Google are very keen on killing SVG. So animation in particular.
Yeah.
Right.
Dean, have you done much sort of? Do you use Lottie in your day to day?
I've started to now.
Yeah.
We're talking like the last 2 weeks. So very recently, a lot of the things I use have started to integrate it, like Webflow. Has had it for, I don't know if you heard of Webflow, but they've had it for a long time, and I was unaware of it until then. And now everything seems to have it, and it's very popular. And I keep on hearing, I'm part of group after group, and they're like, "Oh, we need After Effects to do Lottie. We need After Effects." Like, and people don't want to do that. So I definitely think it's an interesting space.
I mean, I've as boring as I am, we use for board meetings here, we use Cavalry to do some of the user data that we get, and we build the graphics in Cavalry, and then at the moment I'm going out to APNG, and that sits in a Google Doc, and it animates sometimes because APNG is very well supported all the time for everything, but that's really, although that's not very exciting and interesting, I find that whole story quite intriguing, where let's say that Google Slides or something like that supported Lottie, and then you build a graphic and it can run in a presentation in that sense. It's not linear in terms of going out to video, it's just animation anywhere.
What's fascinating about Lottie is you can do a lot of controls for it, like triggers, so you can have like an animation play based on how, like, scrolling down, so when it gets to a certain point, have the animation change. And that's what I'm really excited about. It's less to do with just a standard playing, or else I could do that with a video. And I plan, and I have started to, with some After Effects files, is to do on scroll, and that's what I'm very excited about. More than anything.
Fun. It's just fun, isn't it? It's just
definitely. Clients probably don't care, but I do. So
Adam,
you can't do that. What's that?
Sorry, I was going to say.
Okay. Back to the list. So curve presets, sort of like flow in After Effects. I think it's become so sort of ingrained into my workflow at this point, that just being able to like toggle between most used curves is like, I think having something native in Cavalry would be super helpful. And then on a similar note is the ability to copy curve interpolations from one property to the other. Sort of like ease copy for After Effects. Those two things, you know, they don't sound like a lot, but when you're, you know, in the swing of things, and you know, being able to, you know, quickly change curves and copy them to other values is so huge.
Yeah,
so I think
we can't obviously diss on After Effects too much, we don't have this feature ourselves, but it's just unbelievable that it doesn't exist in After Effects as a native.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy.
we in fact did have curve presets a couple of years ago, but they fell off in one of the rewrites. So,
oh really?
To get
That's
them
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I think I said that to Ian the other month. Like that is something, because I think it's especially for UI stuff as well, Chris. Like being able to match curves that you use in transition presets for web-based stuff, which Flow actually has.
Exactly.
Yeah, would be huge.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely very on board with that thought.
Nice. Next up, and this one is tricky because I don't know how, like, you know, I don't know what's going on in the background or how this is coded. But I often find when using duplicators, like any kind of duplicator, if it's Fibonacci or circle or whatever, but if you like could create the duplicator and then still like be able to modify individual duplicates, like the location of them, or at the very least access the path data for all the different duplicates. Like it would be awesome to be able to tie a null to a single copy in a duplicator. And I don't know, maybe you can do that. Maybe I just haven't figured it out.
You can't yet, but we fully agree with you that it would be great to be able to do that.
Yep.
That's that's really, we sort of hit this on that when we were building MASH as well. Are you guys aware of MASH, the thing that we built for Maya?
Yeah, I'm aware of it, but I've never used Maya, so I have no idea what it does.
Yeah, it's sort of a, you know, we call it a procedural animation toolkit. So it's kind of like MoGraph in cinema is its nearest comparison. And it was always that kind of, when you do all these you can do all this clever stuff procedurally, people still want to get in and do something specific, and that's always the challenge. It's sort of a recurring theme, so we need to know about that. But it is difficult, you know. It's one of those sort of, you want to do everything and then I want to change this little thing, and
totally.
Visuality is a challenge, definitely.
Yep. And I mean, even just writing that down, like being able to like change like a duplicate in a Fibonacci duplicator, it just seems like hard, you know. Like that's probably not how it works.
We'll certainly figure something out.
Next is this is probably one of the biggest ones, and I know it's probably planned, but alpha and luma matting.
Yeah.
Like we need that.
It looms large on our roadmap.
Yeah.
We were kind of hoping to have it done by this point, but unfortunately, too many things needed fixing.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just one of those things that's like, you know, rightly or wrongly, it's become so part of my workflow in After Effects that it's like constantly trying to find workarounds for stuff in Cavalry. But you know, I can wait.
We'll get there.
Adam, sorry, while we're on that theme, have you guys, we were quite proud of the masking side of things, and some, you know, a mask is just a shape and you can use it all over the place. We always found that quite challenging in After Effects, the sort of idea that you needed the same thing in the same place and you couldn't link the two things. Has it actually come up has it sort of come up and been useful to you at all?
Yeah, definitely. I love that you can use masks for multiple layers and all that stuff. It's super handy. The masking system is great, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, personally, I haven't used it.
All that. Sorry, Dean.
I said personally, I haven't used it a ton. but I can assume it's probably handy.
I can't remember who it was now, but it was really interesting. Somebody sent me a scene, and it was done in a very After Effects way, and it was sort of copy this and copy this thing and make this the mask and pre-comp this to then do that. And it's just like, I think there was about 30 odd nodes in there, and we got it down to 6.
Wow.
just through that. So we haven't got feathering and all the going back to the compositing sort of side of things. We haven't got that yet.
Right.
But that's kind of interlinked with the Luma and Alpha mats as well, weirdly.
Yeah.
We're definitely on the list.
Yeah. Next up is, it would be great to have some sort of pre-render workflow. I kind of found that when I started really getting into the thick of like the 30 days of playing around, that I was doing a lot of like really big like stacking orders of like duplicator and duplicator and duplicator. And so then I would pre-render different things. And I found myself doing that for client stuff too. And it would be great to like be able to, I don't know, have a group and be able to like somehow pre-render that all with one click or something. It sends it to the render manager, exports it, imports it, something like that.
Yeah, there's there are some very loose plans for post-render actions, but it's a while away. But what you're talking about is actually quite interesting, because Martin, one of the devs, he is firstly an absolute genius, and secondly he has some ideas around a kind of caching which you could do to kind of freeze objects, so that you'll run through and then you'll have that, and then that will just play back effectively its cache, but it'll kind of all be automatic and kind of in the background. So
that's cool idea.
But again, it's not immediate. But there's some.
Yeah.
There are a few ideas on that kind of front of being able to just kind of like, I'm done with that. Let's just box it off. Yeah.
That's that's a cool idea. That's one thing I'd love to see that is completely, seemingly absent from After Effects is some sort of like asset window preview of like different, like, you scroll to a footage, a piece of footage in your asset window, and just be able to see what it looks like, or maybe play it back or something.
We call this we just basically call this. I think the roadmap item is steal quick look. So on OS 10, you can just hit the space bar when you're over something, and it shows you a preview of it. The very same idea is it's on our roadmap. But we'd love to see that as well.
I think that is so strange that like doesn't exist in After Effects. That's
do you guys use like Frame.io or anything like that for?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah,
that's got you just roll over and you scrub through the whatever it is right on the thumbnail.
Yeah,
I'm really just that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, guys, I think we should probably think about sort of wrapping up. Is there any other little bits and pieces you wanted to sort of shout at us about? Whatever. Any little bugbears that haven't come up?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the rest of the stuff on my list I can send to you guys.
Yeah.
The rest is sort of like minor stuff and stuff that's probably on your roadmap already.
Please do. If we're not responding quickly, it's not because we don't want to hear about it. We sort of love all this feedback. It's and this conversation is brilliant. It's just so good to speak to people who are using it, and obviously people who are mostly enjoying it is a nice thing. But
I mean, I'll say one thing is that it is a really fun program to use. I certainly haven't had as much fun since I started learning After Effects for the first time, and it's so much fun to just play around. So I think you've got a great thing on your hands, and I think once people start playing more with it, I think it's going to be, you guys are going to have a hit. I really do. I think that.
Oh, thank you.
Your check's in the post.
Yeah, we obviously make sure it stays fun as well. That's good. There's just so much more that we've got on our Ian's list is ridiculously long.
Yeah.
All our lists are, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to say like how much I appreciate you guys working on the bugs and stuff. Like it's really, for me anyway, like I said earlier, it got really stable, and I think that's pretty awesome. Bugs don't I'm the kind of person that finds bugs in everything. They don't annoy me, so because I'm just so used to finding bugs. But it's really good to see you guys squashing them. So.
Yeah, well, they get squashed because you tell us about them, or
you tell us about them.
Yeah. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Obviously, do this again sometime. Keep in touch on Discord and whatever channel you want to stay in touch with.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Good chat.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.